Clearly, marriage has positive benefits. The group that is the most likely to downplay the benefits of marriage are the most likely to be products of successful marriages and are the most likely to form marriages themselves.
Dismantle the nuclear family is a luxury belief. Here's why. I'm going to guess that you don't want to spoil your child with luxury brand items, with too many lavish vacations, or with just too much stuff in general. But did you know you can spoil your child with a different kind of luxury altogether? Luxury beliefs. Hi, I am Avital. Welcome back to Hi Fam. Today, I'm going to show you how to not spoil your child with luxury beliefs, what these are, how you can counterbalance them, and how you can raise children that are really aware of the values and beliefs that they hold and their impact on society. Please meet Rob Henderson. If you haven't yet read his incredible book, Troubled, then what are you waiting for? Pause this video, click the link below, and read it right now. Rob Henderson shares his story of his troubled childhood. He was born to a single mother who was addicted to drugs and unable to care for him, and rescued from that situation of extreme neglect, but then bounced around from foster home to foster home, incurring all sorts of abuse and neglect along the way. He finally was adopted, but his adoptive family too ended up breaking down, with his adoptive dad no longer speaking to him, and his adoptive mom going through a series of financial catastrophes and broken relationships. Rob finally made it out of that vicious cycle by joining the military, and 8 years later, he was admitted into Yale and then to Harvard, where he earned his PhD. Rob is obviously a very bright cookie, but the way that he grew up didn't give him much opportunity or much of a chance to really succeed in the academic realm or in many other realms besides. But what happened when he got to university is the really fascinating part. Now, whilst all of that is fascinating and there's so much to learn from Rob's story and his gripping writing style, the real lesson for all of us parents out there comes when he actually gets to these Ivy League institutions. And there he comes across a very interesting, surprising, and new set of beliefs that the people in these institutions are espousing. For example, they advocate for drug legalization, for non-monogamy, for having children out of wedlock. They advocate for open borders or for loose sexual norms, for defunding the police, or they show a skepticism of meritocracy and work ethic or the education system itself. Rob goes on to term the coin luxury beliefs. And these are beliefs that are held by the elite echelons of society to no expense of their own, but at the expense of the lower classes in society. Take, for example, the idea of defunding the police. Usually the people who advocate for this idea are protected from its results, from its consequences. They probably live in safer neighborhoods. They're more protected from crime, or even, in some cases, they can afford their own private security. These ideas are not popular in crime-ridden neighborhoods where the reliance on the police is such that these people feel that the police are already underfunded. Thus, it is a luxury belief. It's a belief that is designed to show and signal our virtue and our status. Only people in elite statuses can actually hold these beliefs because they are protected from the very results and consequences of these ideas. Rob explains the fascinating evolution of signaling wealth and status. And he shows that we used to be able to signal our wealth and status through the clothes we wear or the cars that we buy. But as all brand goods and items have actually become cheaper and cheaper and mass consumption greater and greater, the upper classes of society, the elites, had to find a new way of signaling their wealth and status. And these luxury beliefs are exactly that. When you advocate for things like open borders or non-criminalizing certain crimes, what you're actually showing is that you can afford the repercussions of these actions and of these policies. One of the worst luxury beliefs that Rob came across in the Ivy Leagues, and that he's since been advocating against in his incredible work, is the luxury belief of dismantling the nuclear family. This comes in several forms. It comes in advocacy for non-monogamy, for polyamory, for loose sexual norms, for having children outside of wedlock, or for the idea that all parenthood is created equal. That, for example, being a single parent is absolutely equal to having two parents in the family. What he found was that as he entered into these elite institutions, these ideas became the norm. But Rob himself says that the biggest challenge of growing up in the environments that he did was not the poverty. It was not about the class differences between him and these people, but rather the biggest thing that influenced him was the lack of stability. It was the very fact that he didn't have a stable nuclear two-parent household that led to all of his greatest challenges in life. His closest friends ended up incarcerated or even shot dead in the streets, or struggling to live a crime-free life. And Rob attributes this not to the fact that they were impoverished, although that didn't help, but mainly to the fact that they lacked stability, love, guidance, and boundaries that are provided by a strong family culture from whatever class. Holding this luxury belief of dismantling the nuclear family really offers social status or a sense of moral superiority. I'm not judgy. I, in fact, think that there are many different ways to raise children. I don't think that I have any superiority in my lifestyle over any other. It's a form of cultural relativism. It's a form of pluralism. And of course, there's a small kernel of beauty and truth to the idea that we shouldn't judge others or get on our moral high horse or feel that we are superior. The trouble is that these beliefs themselves and holding them put you in a place of moral superiority to others who can't afford them. Yes, there are many influential intellectuals and celebrities in the upper echelons of society who criticize the nuclear family as outdated or oppressive. Prominent intellectuals such as Judith Butler and progressive writers often argue that the nuclear family has oppressive, rigid gender roles, and that this is something that women in particular should be breaking free of. They often advocate for alternative models of living, such as polyamory or communal living, as a way of breaking free of these shackles and stepping into greater freedom and equality. But these critiques are typically voiced by those who are insulated from everyday economic hardships, a luxury that allows them to experiment with abstract ideals and without risking the stability that most families and children in particular depend on. As early as the hippies of the 1970s, many celebrities and cultural figures have publicly denounced the nuclear family and promote this idea of free love or radical family experimentations as symbols of progress. Progress infers that this is an idea that will actually benefit society and kids, I guess. But often these writers live in highly secured, affluent environments where the risks of alternative family models are minimal, which is what makes these ideas a luxury belief rather than a viable option for most people. And the truth is that we haven't seen a better model than, say, the nuclear family. Children raised by preferably their biological parents, preferably in a monogamous marriage. I know, I feel so judgy just saying that, but studies back this up. Take a listen. Studies from the National Center for Family and Marriage Research show that children raised in stable, two-parent households have significantly higher academic achievement, better mental health, and lower rates of behavioral problems compared to those from single-parent families. For example, researchers indicated that children in intact families can be up to 20 to 30% more likely to succeed academically and emotionally. A Brookings Institute report highlights that intact family structures not only support better economic outcomes for children, but also foster greater social mobility and community stability, underscoring the importance of a secure two-parent environment. As Rob Henderson and others have argued, these ideas are more about signaling moral superiority than about what actually benefits the vast majority of families. In other words, whilst such beliefs might sound fluffy and sweet and progressive and compassionate and so empathic and really enlightened, research consistently shows that it's actually a two-parent stable household that offers children the greatest well-being and the greatest potential to thrive. The nuclear family has proven benefits for children. And if you care about children's well-being, then you wouldn't ignore them in these conversations. Well-being like stability, support, a framework for a healthy child development, good role modeling, and a lot more opportunity. And these are often overlooked in these progressive discussions. You know, I had a great example of this on a recent YouTube video that I shared about the phenomenon of OnlyFans stars and what that might be doing to modern marriage. And yes, I was critical of the way these OnlyFans women were composing themselves. Sleeping with 100 and 1,000 men in one day, in my opinion, is harmful behavior. It is not what I would want for my daughters or sons. And take a look at one of these messages that I received from someone I think called Cal. And Cal, if you're watching this, here's what I have to say to your comment. Let me read it first. You said, I hope I can say this in a way that supports you, your listeners, the women you featured, and all of the sex positive, active women out there. I'm super fortunate to have a healthy, monogamous 27-year relationship raising several children. And I have never felt the need to make negative assumptions or use derogatory terms towards these women featured or the men that choose to have sex with them. I've never felt a moral superiority to them and wouldn't want my children to either. I would caution anyone to feel they are morally above these people due to their own cultural background. I would instead help my kids to see that it is our responsibility not to take advantage of anyone vulnerable or in a bad situation, to understand consent and power dynamics, and certainly not to judge anyone as having a less moral existence, or label people as perpetrators or victims without knowing circumstances or an actual crime taking place. And this is exactly the point that I'm making. Cal here is saying that you mustn't display moral superiority. You mustn't make judgments over other people. In fact, being judgmental seems to be the main cardinal sin of our generation. If you're called judgy, that really stings. That really means something bad about you. If you ever say that any other lifestyle is inferior or that any other culture is less good, less righteous, less correct, less healthy, less safe, then you are engaging in the worst kind of behavior ever. This is born of our cultural relativism, of a very positive idea of live and let live, of the idea that the only real moral code is as long as I'm not harming anyone, as long as everyone consents. And this has led us people in the West in particular to be completely gagged and handcuffed. We're unable to actually voice moral ideas or moral virtues or judgments about better and worse choices. And I think this is gagging us parents as we raise our children. And I want to shift into the part of the video where I give you actually practical steps to counterbalance this idea. Because the truth is, I want to highlight something slightly hypocritical about this approach. And Rob Henderson expresses it best. So let's listen to him.
You said that we should be able to move beyond the nuclear family because it's restrictive and constraining.
This was someone I graduated from Yale with. She was basically telling me that marriage is this outdated patriarchal institution and society should move beyond it. So I asked her, well, how did you grow up? She said, I was raised by my mom and my dad. I did have that conventional family. But I asked her in her future, if she wanted a family, what would she do? And she said, I do want a family someday, probably get married and have a husband. And so I was thinking that you benefited from this and you plan to carry the benefits of that arrangement forward for your own children, but your official public position is no one should do this, it's outdated. She was sort of denigrating it, saying other people shouldn't do this, and to me it seemed very duplicitous that clearly marriage has positive benefits. The group that is the most likely to downplay the benefits of marriage are the most likely to be products of successful marriages and are the most likely to form marriages themselves.
Or listen to this.
Almost every single person I ever met, they were raised by two married parents, stable, secure families, and yet if you look at who is the least likely to support the idea that children should be raised by two married parents, these are people who have university degrees, earn six-figure incomes, who they themselves follow that conventional bourgeois life track. There's a professor at Yale Law who wrote this book about meritocracy, and one line that he uses is, our modern day elites are non-practicing libertines. And what he means by this is that a lot of these people who graduate from elite universities, they publicly espouse this idea of you do you, whatever kind of lifestyle you choose, it's totally fine. All family structures are equal. But then privately, when you look at the choices they make, they are the most likely to get married, the most likely to prioritize education and family and their own children and trying to set their own kids up for success. And meanwhile, for everyone else, they take this very sort of hands-off approach or even try to undermine family, which I find shocking.
So Cal, I know that your comment came from the best place, and I hear what you're saying, that we shouldn't judge other people, that everyone should be free to do whatever they want to do. But the fact that you're in a 27-year monogamous relationship tells me that you, at least for yourself, feel that this is the best way to raise children. And I want to just use that to ask all of us, do we no longer feel comfortable to make life recommendations to our children? Recently, one of my students told me that in her heart of hearts, she really does hope that her children get married and start families. She feels that this is the best path forward in life, the best way to lead a meaningful life. And it's actually important to her that her children do that. And she said that up until recently, she felt she couldn't actually talk to them about that. She couldn't actually say to them, hopefully one day you'll get married and you'll find a love like daddy and I have. Or hopefully when you're a parent one day, you'll be able to teach your kids X, Y, Z. She didn't even want to say that because she didn't want to suggest to them that this might be an expectation that she has. We have become so squirmish and so uncomfortable and so worried about being perceived as judgy that we're unable to articulate the types of values, ideas, and beliefs that we think are better. Because better sounds so judgy, better sounds so morally superior. But here's the thing, there are morally superior choices. And when you constantly break down morality and break down lifestyle choices and break down societal norms to the place where you're not allowed to discern any kind of hierarchy of what's better and what's worse, then we are doing our children a disservice. Let me give you a really simple example just to drive this point home. A child who is educated to read is better set up for life. They're going to have much more opportunities. Now, some children will never be able to read. We don't have to judge that. We know that that's true. We can love and accept them unconditionally forever and ever. But the fact is that most of us would want for our children to learn to read and to read well, to reach a high level of reading proficiency. Let's take it further. We would want them to be well educated because most of us see the value of an education. In other words, we are able to make the judgment that being better educated is better than being worse educated. Okay. Now, we can debate what better education looks like or what worse education looks like, but I'm sure that most of you watching would agree that you want your child to be well educated, to have a good education. But my friend, that's a judgment call. Why are you judging people who choose not to educate their children? Why are you judging kids who aren't educated as having less life skills or less potential for meaning, growth, happiness, economic success, social status than your child? That's very judgmental of you, right? So do you see my point? We do have to make certain judgments because we have to show our children what we value. And as soon as you tell them what you value, you're making a judgment that this is better than the other thing. You might be showing it purely through your life. You might just be modeling it like you are, investing in family, for example, or you are investing in education, or you think having a strong, healthy body is important. But you're showing your kids these values through your lifestyle. And I want to suggest that we feel a little bit more comfortable in showing them with words as well. Because this virtue signaling where we say nothing is better than anything else, nothing brings better benefits than anything else, it's simply not true. And it's just that, a luxury belief that is there to show us as morally superior, better people who can afford these ideas. But society can't afford these ideas. People like Rob Henderson suffered so much at the hand of these ideas. So how do we escape it? Well, number one, you have to actually get clear on your values and beliefs. And if you need help doing that, then I invite you into the studio at highfam.com/studio. You can get on the waitlist, or maybe you can join today if doors are open. The idea of the studio is to be able to craft our vision and to be good leaders for our kids, to share our values and to actually articulate them. But many of us are confused about what our values really are. In this world of absolute relativism, of no absolute truth, of no absolute morality, of a real fear of being discerning or judgy or hierarchical in any kind of way, many of us are so timid or confused or shut down this part of our brain that even thinks about what is better and what is worse. So I want you to ask yourself these hard questions like, do I think it's better to have a good, healthy marriage or not? Is that how I think children should be raised? Do I think that loose sexual norms are positive on balance or not? Do I think that porn use is a good thing or a bad thing? One of Cal's comments on YouTube was also that there is no such thing as evil and good. And fine, those are religious terminologies. You don't have to use them, say, if you're not a religious person. But there is such a thing as better or worse in terms of the types of outcomes that it creates and the types of societies that it creates. And data is pretty clear on the nuclear family being better for raising children. Data is also pretty clear on the harmful effects of porn in the sex industry, but that's for a whole other video. We can actually discern and tell which societies are better by their products, right? You know them by their fruit. You see what kind of economic success, what kind of social success, how people feel in those societies, what tends to happen, how safe are they, what kind of flourishing and creativity and innovation do they bring about. We can certainly debate the finer details of each question, but surely we should be able to say to our children, a society that buys and sells children for slavery or for being wives is worse than a society where children have basic rights and protections before the law. A society where husbands are allowed to rape their wives is worse than a society where that is considered a crime. Or a society where children grow up not knowing their parents at all and being bounced around from foster home to foster home is worse than a society where children grow up being loved and cherished within a two-parent stable household. Even just saying that makes me afraid that you're all going to come at me calling me judgmental in the comments below. But that leads me to point number 2, which is that we have to learn to be more afraid of being confusing than we are of being judgmental. We owe our children clarity, conviction, confidence, and a compelling path to move forward for. We owe our children a guidance system through which we recommend, strongly recommend, suggest, and guide them to live their lives well, whether it's healthy food choices or healthy relationship choices or healthy economic choices. Our children deserve our moral guidance. They deserve our moral convictions. And when you always say, well, live and let live, let everyone just do whatever they want, you are showing them that you are refraining from judgment and that you're kind and compassionate and empathic to other people. And that is good. But you're also showing them that you have no conviction or clarity or suggestions, serving suggestions for this life. Children need direction on how to lead a good, meaningful life. And we see that they're not getting it. And how do we see that? Well, we see it in the high rates of failure to launch. Somewhere around 30% of 25-year-olds still are unable to stand on their own 2 feet. We see it in the fact that they are feeling more anxious and depressed than ever before. We see it in the fact that they are opting out of relationships. And worst of all, we see it in their severe isolation and sense of nihilism. I think children need and deserve a blueprint towards a meaningful life. And as their leaders, as their parents with fully developed prefrontal cortexes, with more life experience, with more legal liability, with more emotional, social, academic, and moral responsibility towards them, I think we've got to give it to them. So if your child is judging someone else and you're so busy just making sure that they're not judgmental, that you forget to offer them true guidance about what would be the better, healthier, happier, more meaningful, more moral way to live, then you're missing out on a massive chunk of parental responsibility. We should be a lot more worried about our children being really confused and lost than we are about our children being judgmental of others. But if you are worried about them being judgmental of others, let me tell you something. Just teach them to be respectful. Teach your child to respect everyone, even if we disagree with them. You see, Cal in her comment was telling me to be respectful by reserving judgment. But I want to say 2 things can be true at once. I can judge a choice as inferior, as harmful, as less good, as negative, as immoral even, and still show respect to that individual. I can respect people no matter what their positions are or their lifestyle is. And I can still reserve the right to be discerning and judgmental over whether or not I agree with that lifestyle choice. I mean, I have to ask myself, would I want this for my kids? And when I see OnlyFans creators, my clear and compelling answer is no. I wouldn't want it for my kids for a plethora of reasons. Number 1 on that list is for moral reasons. And yes, that shows that I have moral superiority, that I think a culture of monogamy is better than a culture of polygamy, for example. Sure. Or that I think that sex should be linked to love and not to money transactions. Okay. Or that I think that people should be faithful and that they should build lifelong lasting relationships because it's the best place to raise children and not bounce around from partner to partner. Sure, that makes me very judgmental, I know, and that's hard to say on the air. But the truth is that I still offer love and respect to everyone I know. I have plenty of friends who live alternative lifestyles to mine, and we're still friends. They know that I don't agree with it. They know that I wouldn't guide my children towards it or wouldn't make those choices for myself. And they also know that I love and respect them unconditionally. And that's the thing that I think we need to bring back in our society, is the realization that those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can love and respect and offer unconditional support to someone while still disagreeing with their lifestyle or judging them for it. Rob Henderson is saying this about himself. He's saying the way that I grew up was inferior to a stable two-family home. It was less good. That's a moral call. That's a psychological call. That's an economic call. That's a social call. There are lots of different things that make it less good. But ultimately, what he's saying is, I think it would have been better for me and for any child to be raised by two stable, loving parents, preferably biological. Is that throwing shade at adoptive parents or at single parents? Absolutely not. Everyone's doing the best they can with what they have. But it is saying that there is better or worse. Put it this way, I don't eat purely organic food, but I know that people who are eating pesticide-free, organically grown food are getting a higher quality of nutrition than I am. That doesn't mean that I'm devalued as a human being, that I'm less worthy, that there's something deeply wrong with me. It means that my choice of what to feed my body is less good than their choice for any number of reasons. You might look at two moms, one who works outside the home and sends her kid to daycare from a very young age for very long hours, and one who stays home with her children till they're 3 or 4 years old and only then sends them out for small, gradually growing amounts of time. And you might say, I think this one is better for the child. That mom is doing what she has to do. She's working within her resources. She's doing the best she can. We don't have to judge her as a human being, but we can judge that lifestyle choice as better or worse for the results. Now, life is rarely as simple as that. There may be many different reasons that she's going out to work, and it might be the better choice in the circumstance she's in. Like for me, eating non-organic might be the better choice for the circumstance I'm in, but that doesn't make it a purely better choice if we just measure the actual facts and results. I have a lot of students who are single parents. I have a lot of friends who are single parents or divorced or in blended family homes or widowed. And you better bet they're raising their children not in a stable two-parent household, right? It's a blended household. It's an orphaned household. There are many different things that life throws at us. But we do have to be able to articulate what the goal is, what the ideal is, what we want to strive for, and why other things might be harmful or just plain wrong. That doesn't mean we don't show love and compassion and friendship to everyone. It just means that we can also either disagree with them or just be honest about the facts that not every lifestyle is ideal. Unfortunately, due to the war, we know lots of people who have been widowed. They know full well that they're raising their children in a less ideal situation right now. Are any of us judging them for it? Heck no. We all just want to show them love, support, and compassion and help to fill in the gaps wherever we can. But that doesn't mean it's just as good. It's obvious to everyone who has eyes that it's not just as good, that that's not what anyone would want for their child, that that's not an ideal situation. And yes, we can say that single parenthood is on average, on the whole, stereotypically, less good than two parents. If you have an abusive partner, is that less good? No. There are, of course, exceptions to the rule. Are there situations where children should absolutely be put in foster care? Of course. But the point is, what are we striving for? Are we willing to uphold an ideal? Are we willing to put something on a pedestal and say, that's the goal? We're not all going to get there. We're not all going to get there all the time. But yes, a strong nuclear family, a strong family culture where people are committed to each other and committed to raising children together is better than all of the alternatives in terms of children's outcomes. Number 4, just teach your child to be questioning and to have critical thinking. When they state something, ask them what's wrong, what's right about that, where did they get that from, can they back it up? Inside the studio, we teach a lot of critical thinking skills. In fact, I have a whole workshop on it in there. And the idea is to help children to discern and to be somewhat judgmental of ideas, to test ideas on their merit. Do they stand up? Do they withstand evidence, data, science, our moral intuitions, our histories and traditions? Do they make sense? Are they common sense? Or are they a luxury belief? Now's your turn. What do you think of luxury beliefs? What do you think of the idea of dismantling the family? Is this just common sense and totally fine and all family structures are created equal? Are you too raising your children to be skeptical of meritocracy or of work ethic? Raising them to have loose sexual norms or lots of drug experimentalization? Or do you feel that these opinions are sometimes virtue signals and an engagement in status display? Let me know in the comments below. Feel free to agree, disagree, push back, or correct me, but just do so respectfully. And make sure to get your hands on Rob Henderson's book. I'll link it in the comments below. Much, much love, and keep on living that high fam life. I'll see you in the next video.